Islam in Focus is brought to you by Gala Travels. For all your travel needs, call Gala Travels at 416-491-5314 or visit galatravels.com. Islam in Focus is brought to you by PortServe International Limited, providing cargo handling services internationally. Please visit portserve.com. Islam in Focus is brought to you by Five Ways Financial, free consultation at no obligation. Visit fiveways.com. Islam in Focus is brought to you by Fortune Metals Inc., a top choice in scrap metal trading. Visit fortunemetals.com.
لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islam in Focus. I'm Sajjad Saeed. Just a friendly reminder that we're on every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Rogers Channel 129, Bell Channel 217, and Star Choice Channel 348. Be sure to tune in and let your friends and family know that we're on. Today we have Brother Hassanain Rajaali with us. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Before we begin today's program, if you could just take 30 seconds, tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization you represent.
Well, I come from Dearborn, Michigan, and I represent, actually, I'm a universal kind of a person going all over the place.
Okay.
But we have our own organization called Tawheed Institute. We have a camp facility out in Lapeer, Michigan. It's the first Muslim camp.
I'll have to visit you sometime.
You have to.
Excellent.
You have to come and enjoy it there.
Excellent.
But that's what I'm more involved with philanthropic work.
And where can we find out more information? What is your website?
Tawheed1.org, TAWHEED1.org.
Excellent. I'd encourage all the viewers to take a look at his website. Now today's topic I think is a very important one. Living in the West, as more and more people begin to embrace Islam and the followers that we already have, people start to understand that once a year we perform a whole month of fasting, right? It's been commonly accepted now. But a lot of times the people around us may not understand it. They just know we don't eat for the whole day. And we go to the mosque and things like that. Now, what is the purpose of this fasting, this month of fasting? In very layman's term, why do we do this?
Well, the purpose of our existence is where the answer comes. The purpose of our existence is really to understand the enormous mercy of God for having created us and placed us on this earth and given us free will, and we are really being tested so that we can participate in elevating our own status through free will. Okay. This is really the design of God. As a result, fasting is really training on how to succeed in this trial. And you'll notice that we have desires and we have passions, which are good, but sometimes they tend to be evil. And fasting trains us on how to avoid the evil and to strengthen the good. So really fasting is a great universal principle of self-control, feeling the hunger, which is good for the body for a short period of time. It makes you also empathize those who are in need. And of course it allows you to abstain from that which can be harmful. And that's all part of the training in fasting. And God has decreed fasting for all of humanity.
So do other religions also fast?
Sure. Christianity.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, among Christians, for example, the Catholics, for sure, they do fast, when they go through Lent. The Jews do fast also. They have different ways of fasting, but nonetheless, it's fasting where they abstain from certain kinds of food, certain kinds of activities.
I guess the point is the same. It's just performed a little bit differently in different times of the year.
Correct. Well, with Islam, what's unique is that it's given itself 30 days, which is ideal for the society, and it amplifies the importance of this transaction in a social environment where we all participate together. So you ask any Muslim in the world to tell you the month of Ramadan is the most unique month in the year, where the engines get reversed,
right. Our
lifestyles get changed, right. And we become much more reflective, which is very good. It's almost like detoxifying
right.
the community.
Right. I guess if we're bad people, for example, and we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing throughout the whole year, it's like a cleansing period.
Exactly.
I guess you could
it's
say.
A cathartic experience.
Excellent. I guess that's the simplest way to put it, right? Because God gives us certain things that we're supposed to do, and if you're like me, you don't always do them. But Ramadan rolls around, the month of fasting rolls around, and you at least make a little bit of an extra effort to do some of those things.
And God loves us so much that He has made it an obligation to fast, which is amazing. There's one thing to make it optional, but He has made it obligatory, subject to certain
right.
conditions, of
right.
course, barring health problems
right.
and so on. But that obligation becomes very, very good, because now it enforces a collective activity
right.
within the community,
right.
and it amplifies this whole notion.
I guess it gives the community an opportunity to get to know each other as well,
exactly.
because people spend more time here, and a lot of good comes out of that. They start to plan that they want to, build certain projects or move forward as a community. I'm sure you've experienced things like that working, in the community like you have in the past. Would you relate to that?
Well, the month of Ramadan is a very spiritual month.
Yeah.
It's very spiritual. It's very reflective, very spiritual, very cathartic, as we said. Combine all of those together, you end up becoming very elevated as an individual at the end of the month. So I think it's a very, very positive month. And the fact that the divine mercy of God upon mankind is to instill this upon us. As Allah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. The Quran is very clear. O you who believe, we have prescribed, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ, we have prescribed fasting as we prescribed it with your preceding generations, so that you achieve greater God consciousness.
Excellent. I guess there's so many different levels of it, whether you look at it strictly from a spiritual perspective, but also from a health perspective, right? People will eat bad foods and things like that, but at least during Ramadan you're doing structured fasting.
Absolutely. Any kind of spiritual upliftment always has a physical health benefit. They're what we call, they're mutual.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah, they're very, very mutual with each other.
Excellent.
So when God prescribes something, it's not only good for my health, but it's also good for my spirit.
Excellent.
And that which is good for my spirit generally tends to be good for my health.
I guess it's like the mind-body-spirit connection. It all goes hand in hand.
It's holistic.
Now, the other thing that a lot of people, Muslims understand this, but a lot of people don't understand, there are added significance in certain nights in the month of Ramadan. Mainly in the revelation of our holy book, the Holy Quran. Could you elaborate a little bit on that and its significance?
Well, God always chooses certain days in His revelations, and He amplifies those days as an important day. Humans have this tendency that in a 365-day period, when you give importance to a day, there tends to be greater concentration on that day. A good example is Christmas, for example. Christians tend to go to church more often on that day than any other day during the year. Churches fill up on Christmas Eve. So you notice that allocating one day of remembrance tends to focus a lot of energy in that direction. So it's a natural thing. In all religions they have it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Laylatul Qadr, the night of power, is a great night. It is better than 1,000 months. Laylatul Qadri khayrun min alfi shahr. So Allah has chosen that. And if you go back in history, you'll find all revelations of Allah were actually revealed during that period.
Not just the Quran, but all the
preceding books too, which Allah revealed.
So there's a lot of history, I guess you could say, beyond giving attention to these nights, not just from our perspective, but even
all the preceding books, Tawrat, Zabur, Injil, the 4 major books, all of them, plus the other books that were revealed that were not mentioned in the Quran.
So for the people who don't know about the exact events, could you just elaborate a little bit on how the Prophet, was he fasting during this time as well before he got the message? What was the background on this incident?
Well, the Quran has many stages. There's the Quran that comes from the guarded tablet, which is the Lawh Mahfuz. And Allah said, إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ فِي كِتَابٍ مَكْنُونٍ لَا يَمَسُّ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the guarded tablet, which is really the tablet where all the universal laws originate from. And the Quran is a derivation of the laws from the guarded tablet.
What is the guarded tablet?
Guarded tablet is a prescribed set of laws that God has decreed for the universe.
So this is before
it's universal.
Before mankind.
Oh, it's universal
Gotcha.
for the universe.
Right.
If I was on a different planet,
those
and if I was a different creature, I would have a Quran that is derived from
those things. So I guess
it's universal.
Right. So these are universal laws that exist regardless of what race, what
of course.
Whatever you are.
Yeah, those are rudimentary.
Right.
Now we're talking at a higher level.
Right.
So the Quran has many stages. It's a stage in the guarded tablet. Then it comes down to mankind in a spiritual form, which is what came into the heart of the Prophet.
So he was, from my understanding, he was in a state of reflection.
Well, God revealed the entire Quran in his heart.
Okay.
All at one time.
Before it was actually revealed to us, it was sent to him
Correct.
first.
The Quran has many stages.
Okay.
So the Quran was revealed spiritually into the heart of the Holy Prophet, which then later on Allah commanded him to recite it to the people.
At the right time.
Correct.
And the right point in history.
Which came in stages. Then the Quran was recited to the people based on the situation.
So it was revealed to his heart during these...
On one night.
In this night of power.
At one night. The entire Quran was revealed.
The night of power.
Correct. And then God commanded him to reveal it to people, to recite it to the people. And then over time, the Quran was transcribed, was written, and then it was collected. So the Quran had a pre-existing stage from Lawh Mahfuz, which became the spiritual stage, which became the physical stage, which became the written stage, and then the compiled stage.
That's what we have
correct
today. Now, I guess the other unique thing among this, if that is factual now, that God revealed the whole Quran in that night of power into the Prophet's heart, the Quran is probably the only religious scripture that is identical in its stage, what it was when it was revealed, what it's like today. Is that true?
Correct. And by the way, the Quran is the only book known to man that's divinely prescribed, where God is the exclusive author.
So it doesn't work like that in
there is no other scripture where God is the exclusive author.
Right.
There are what we call inspirations and revelations given where humans have written their opinions about what God wanted them to say in other scriptures.
Yeah.
But the Quran, you'll notice from the beginning to the end, the author is exclusively God. The Prophet does not speak of himself in any of the verses. Whenever the Prophet speaks, God commands him to speak. Thus, the author is always God. It's the only book in the world where God is the exclusive author, cover to cover.
I guess that's really why it's such an important event, is because this is the very existence, or the very existence of our religion is dependent on that one night, because the Quran came down on the night. Would that be true
well, not the existence, but the security and the enlightenment of our religion.
Because it ensured that to whatever generations that come in the future, they'd have a document
Exactly.
that would be unadulterated.
Correct.
It would always be correct in every which way, shape, or form.
Correct. So in other words, your point of existence,
Yeah.
you're right. In that context, you're right.
That's what I meant,
Yes,
right? Because
yes, yeah.
if you take a look at, I don't want to narrow out certain religions, but, they'll have different versions of their own scriptures.
Correct.
So what is one to follow? In Islam, even if I'm, a certain sect or you're a certain sect, the one unanimous truth is the Quran.
We don't have versions in
Right,
the Quran.
it's-
We have versions of translations,
Right.
but we do not have a version of Quran.
Right. So if I really want to learn what's in the Quran, I need to go learn Arabic,
Exactly.
and I can get the true meaning.
The Arabic is preserved.
Right.
Correct.
And so that is a great thing. And a lot of times people, they don't realize that. They think that even Muslims I've talked to sometimes, they think that different sects have different Qurans. But
Correct.
the
That's not
true
true.
miracle that the Prophet brought was the Holy Quran.
Exactly.
Excellent.
And it is a miracle that continues to expose itself over time.
Right.
All of the miracles that came before died with time.
Right.
It's the only miracle that continues to grow
Right.
with time.
I was reading a little bit of history, I guess, and I didn't really understand this at the time, but at the time the Quran was revealed, there was more importance given to the poets than everybody else. Like I wouldn't say more importance, but the poets were very well respected.
Correct.
And the fact that the Prophet had a revelation that nobody could duplicate or nobody could even put at the same level, even close to it, was a miracle to those people.
Correct.
But today when we read it, we get different senses of miracles from it. We get different senses of knowledge of it.
Correct.
Is that something that you would relate to as well, where you could give it to a guy who knows nothing about the religion, but when he reads it, he'll get something out of
Absolutely.
it? Excellent.
It's a book that not only did the Arabs of the time get so impressed by it, but even a non-Arab later in time, even though they were shallow in their approach to the
Yeah.
the Quran approached them in their own ways and
Excellent.
even impacted them.
Excellent.
I mean, I know of a Jesuit priest, personally, in New York, who became a Muslim because his brother gave him a copy of the Quran.
Right.
And he was a priest studying, he was a Jesuit
Yeah.
priest. And when he read just Surah Al-Fatiha, he told me, he says, when I read just the opening, which is Surah
Yeah.
Al-Fatiha, he says, I knew this
Yeah.
is God talking.
Excellent.
And when I continued to read it, I knew God is talking to me, so I became a Muslim.
Excellent. So bringing it now back to the night of power, if all these miracles or all these, these events happen after the fact, but they all lead back to that night that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet. So one of the things that I observed in the month of Ramadan is a lot more people, they start to read the Quran. Even whether it's in English or whether it's in French, whatever language they understand, they start to read it. And that's when truly lasting changes happen, because they're actually reading the source.
Correct.
They're not just, talking to someone about religion. They're focusing on the truest form
Correct.
of religion.
Which is what we should be doing year round.
Right.
But Ramadan is just an introduction to what we should be doing for the rest of the year. So we say we charge our batteries in
Yeah.
the month of Ramadan.
And it takes us for the next 11 months, and
Correct.
we do it again.
And let's make an interesting point here that some people may think that when the Quran came, Islam started.
Right.
That's totally wrong. When the Quran came, it was the last phase of Islam.
Right.
And when the Prophet was sent, he was the last Prophet of Islam. So Islam did not start 14 centuries ago. It was completed 14 centuries ago.
So I guess what you could say is religion, like we've talked about before, how religion started right when
Adam was there.
when Prophet Adam came to
That
this
was
earth.
Islam.
And
it continued
right.
through revelations.
Right.
And then the 14 centuries ago, the whole law and the system of God,
Was
the message
established.
was completed,
Right.
which is what we call al-Islam.
Gotcha.
But preceding to that,
It was
always Islam.
I guess that's sometimes in our understanding, we don't really take the time to understand other prophets and other narrations. We look at things from a very isolated perspective, and that leads us to be ignorant. So the very thing that we were going away from, we were saying we're getting educated to be not ignorant, but because we focus only on one thing and one point of view, we don't know how the rest of the world sees things.
Exactly, and we have to see it properly,
Yeah.
meaning Islam is not the youngest of the Abrahamic religions. As far as we're concerned, it is the original religion.
because it's always been there since
It
certain
has
people.
to be.
Yeah.
God doesn't send His law 14 centuries ago and then just sort of
Yeah.
changes His law
Yeah.
prior to that. That doesn't make sense.
It makes sense like that. Now, so there's a lot of different aspects of Ramadan, and we don't have enough time to discuss all these things, but the basic thing, you can't eat from sunrise to sunset. You can't do certain acts and things like that. But what I always look forward to is Eid, right? The celebration after the fact, right? Everybody loves a good party. But what is the real spiritual significance of the day of Eid, right? Because I think a lot of people misinterpret this where, as soon as Eid comes, we can do all the things that we weren't allowed to do and have a good time and party. But I remember hearing one time in a lecture that Eid is actually the most important aspect of Ramadan because it focuses on all the things that we've learned to kind of reflect and see how we can implement these things moving forward. What would you have to say about that?
Well, Eid is actually a gift of God to the human race for having abstained from doing wrong things. So actually, if you want to extrapolate that further, the Holy Prophet has said every day is Eid, but the condition is that you must avoid evil deeds for that day.
There's an asterisk beside it, I guess, right?
Yeah. In other words, if you spend that day without committing a sin, that day is Eid for you, celebrate, because you have committed a great deed, a great act. So, month of Ramadan is a period where we abstain from many wrong deeds, which is great. And Allah says, reward yourself for having spent the time to keep away from evil deeds.
Yeah.
So, Eid is really a celebration for having kept away from wrong deeds. And that's beautiful.
Excellent.
Imagine rewarding a child for having been a good boy and not having committed any bad deeds.
Yeah.
If the child is constantly rewarded for that, how do you think this child will be raised?
He'd be
very positive. Yeah.
I guess it's something that we can take and apply to the different aspects of our life where, I've been in that boat before where you try to make positive and lasting changes, but you do it for a day or, a couple days. Like classic examples, New Year's, right? People set their New Year's resolutions, or like, for example, when they want to get back in shape, it's like, I want to get back into shape. And the gyms are all filled up in the first couple weeks, but by February 1st, where's all the people, right? It's because we don't have the discipline to do it. And one of the things that Ramzan forces us to do is for the first week our body adjusts. For the second week it's a little bit easier. The third week we're kind of getting it. By the fourth week, we could live like that. Right. But God says,
enough.
Reward yourself. And then you've made those positive and lasting changes.
And what's beautiful about what we have in Islam, unlike the New Year's resolution, is as much as a person sets resolutions, and I think it's very good, it's ironic that New Year's resolutions are started off from the wrong footing, where you pop champagne and you indulge in indecent activities as your start off for the New Year's resolution. So it's sort of a paradox. What kind of a resolution are you going to set when the very moral foundation is already being corrupted? What's beautiful about what we're doing is that we're starting with resolutions, but it's all on good footings. And there are no immoral activities allowed, which is fantastic, because the moral human being is the best human being. So I think that's very important to understand. Even our New Year, if you look at Muharram, we start from a sad note, not from a happy note. But guess what? It's a perfect way to create resolutions, because sad notes check us. But the minute we go wild and crazy, we tend to lose our focus.
And I guess that's just the societies that we live in today, where they promote partying and indecencies and things like that, like pop culture. But sometimes, that whole partying and all that stuff, the reward is so temporary, where you do all the things during the day, and then towards the nighttime you have even more fun. You go to sleep, just before the sun is about to set, and then you're suffering from it. You can't wake up, you can't function properly. But what I've noticed is, during Ramadan, when you start to make some of these changes, they're not temporary changes. They're lasting changes.
Lasting. And let me make a further note that partying in Islam is very recommended. There's nothing wrong to party. But party in a moral way. So let's not think that Islam is prohibited.
Right.
In other words, have a good time, get together. In fact, Islam encourages having dinners together, inviting people to your home, celebrating Eid. Imagine, no religion in the world celebrates more than Islam. Because the Prophet has said that every Friday is Eid for the believers. Means every Friday you're celebrating. Which religion celebrates every Friday? There's no such religion that I know of. And then when you're celebrating also, party. Invite people, have good food, share and share alike, but don't be immoral. Don't be indecent.
It makes sense.
So we generally think in the world that when we party, we've got to have certain indecent qualities for it to be considered a good party. Well, that's wrong. And I think it's just a frame of reference.
Exactly, because the media portrays a party a certain way.
It's got to have alcohol, got to have music, got to have this. And, okay, well, Islam says throw all these out. There's another kind of a party which is better for you.
Yeah. And you know what? It's once you get used to partying in a clean way, it just becomes a habit. And I think the problem is certain people think we can't have fun unless we have these things, but when you haven't tried the alternative, right? You haven't.
And a clean alternative is always better than a filthy alternative.
Yeah. And I think that's really what Ramzan teaches you, right? You could have a gathering, you could have great food, you could discuss and do fun things together, but at the end of the night there's no side effects, right?
Correct.
And parting from a traditional sense, from our North American culture, if you consume alcohol, you do drugs, not only are you affecting yourself, but now you're putting yourself, other people around you in jeopardy.
Exactly.
We spend thousands of dollars educating people not to drink and drive, but not enough money spending people not to drink.
Correct.
Right? So it's a weird paradox that we live in that sense. Now, what are some of the other things that you may want to add about Ramadan? Is there anything that people who have never heard of it should know about, or something that you just want to pass along to our viewers?
Well, it's very important to be reflective.
Yeah.
A reflective human being is the one who knows himself or herself. And a person who knows himself or herself gets exposed to their weaknesses and their strengths. That's a beautiful human being. A human being who's taken account of his abilities and inabilities is a beautiful human being, because now they know where their boundaries lie.
Yeah.
Ramadan encourages that. Being reflective is very encouraged. And you notice that when you're in a state of hunger, you tend to become more reflective.
Excellent.
Okay, so it encourages that. It encourages feeling sympathy and empathy for those who are poor. You'll notice that in the Muslim population, the greatest amount of charity takes place in the month of Ramadan, because people feel it. They feel the necessity to share because they feel those issues.
Right.
So overall, it's very, very, very beautiful, undoubtedly, that we are so blessed to have such a month.
A couple things when we're wrapping up here. What could people who are Muslim, what could they do to reach out and share this experience with other people? And number two, people who aren't Muslim, how can they participate and get a sense of what we feel?
Well, for the first question, I think it's good for us to reach out to those who are in need, regardless of what faith people belong to go out and help the needy, people who are hungry, feed the hungry. Invite the hungry to come to your gatherings, and let's break fast together. Invite the Jews, the Christians, and say, let's all break fast together. It's a beautiful relationship.
Excellent.
Quran, in fact, encourages us to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, to consider the orphans and the wayfarer and the needy who are really in need of such sustenance. We need to think of them.
Excellent.
Because all the food that we usually eat in Ramadan are very rich foods.
Yeah.
So let's think about sharing that food too. It's beautiful in that. As far as the second part is concerned, I think you basically alluded to the fact that what can a person do to understand it? Invite them to join us to fast. And if they're not going to fast, at least let them participate in some of our activities in the evening time. Because the month of Ramadan is the month of a lot of sermons, a lot of reflection, a lot of discussion about the Quran.
Excellent.
Discussions about what the Quran represents.
Excellent.
Invite them to join us. I think it's very important to invite people to come and join, to listen to our sermons, so that maybe they can learn something, and I'm sure we will learn something from them too.
Excellent.
Because they will make comments that we never thought of.
Excellent. Well, I do thank you for your insights. It was a pleasure talking to you again.
Thank you.
And again, you're welcome to come back to the Jaffrey Islamic Center anytime, and you're welcome on Islam in Focus anytime. And I will take up your offer and visit you
Absolutely.
in the camp, and I'll have a good time, most
Absolutely.
likely.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank the viewers for watching us once again. See you back here at 10 a.m. next week, and inshallah, we will have a great show for you again. Thank you, and Assalamu alaikum.
Islam in Focus is brought to you by Gala Travels. For all your travel needs, call Gala Travels at 416-491-5314 or visit galatravels.com. Islam in Focus is brought to you by PortServe International Limited, providing cargo handling services internationally. Please visit portserve.com. Islam in Focus is brought to you by 5 Ways Financial, free consultation at no obligation. Visit 5ways.com. Islam in Focus is brought to you by Fortune Metals Inc., a top choice in scrap metal trading. Visit fortunemetals.com.